Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Cherie Nuez and I'm a CalTAP training coordinator with the California Department of Veteran Affairs. Today we are presenting to Citrus College in partnership with Citrus College and U.S. Vets Outside the Wire, recognizing and coping with addiction. Joining me today is my colleague, Michael Cisneros, who is working in the back end. So if you have any questions, please do open the Q&A tab at the bottom of your bar there. In addition, your chat function should be open as well. So if you have any resources that you'd like to download, that is welcome for you as well. And then additionally, we have Anthony Rodriguez, our Los Angeles link, who will be joining us and speaking towards the end of our presentation. But our main speaker for today is Marie Barros from US Vets that'll be speaking here shortly. So we just have a little bit of housekeeping to go over with you. We just like to say, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and your consent is required. Participation in the meeting will act as your acknowledgement for the recording. I'd like to recognize and note that your camera and microphones are off. This is to ensure the bandwidth and quality of our presentation is here for you. We do encourage you to keep in touch with us by providing your email, ensuring that's a non-DoD email. So when you apply for benefits and services, we can continue to keep in touch with you. Also, if you experience any loss of internet or connectivity, feel free to rejoin us here on the webinar utilizing the link provided in your email. And then if you do have any questions, like I mentioned, open up that Q&A chat panel and you'll be able to ask questions to myself or any one of the panelists today. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn over our speaking to our wonderful subject matter expert, Marie Barros.
Thank you, Cherie and Michael and CalVets and CalTAP. Thank you so much for the work you do in continuing to do these webinars and serving our veterans. And we're always pleased when you include U.S. vets. My name is Marie Barros. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm also a clinical supervisor. U.S. Vets is the largest nonprofit agency providing veterans and their family with services. Those services include housing. We've been serving veterans with housing for over 30 years. We provide employment services, case management. We have a program specifically dedicated to working with women veterans, and then we provide mental health services. The program I'm with is called Outside the Wire, and actually our mission is to be at local community colleges and where we are embedded into the Veterans Resource Center or the Success Center, depending on what campuses. And we're at 9 different campuses in the LA area and 8 in Orange County. And actually we're at Citrus College. And I know that that's who we're speaking with today. So welcome to the Citrus students. And hopefully there are some of you that will recognize me because I've been on campus a number of times. So welcome on board. The topic that I'm going to be talking about today is addiction. It's something that we all have been somehow touched with, either in our families, friends, loved ones, and certainly we see it on the news an awful lot and in our community. So today I'm hoping to talk about what is addiction, recognizing some of the signs of addiction, looking at the connection between addiction and mental health, and also looking at some treatments and some various things that may be valuable for us to look at. When you're listening to this presentation, really would like you to take a look from not only is it something that resonates for you, that could be information for you, but also, as I mentioned, we're all so touched by addiction that it may be a loved one, it may be a friend, someone in your circle of influence, that you might see some things here that could be valuable for them. I will be giving some resources at the end, and those can also be things that you can forward to someone else if you think that there's value for that. Next slide, please. So the first thing I want to start with is what is addiction? And so addiction is a psychological and physical inability to stop consuming a chemical, drug, activity, or substance, even though it is causing psychological and physical harm. So when we look at addiction, there are stigma, myths, judgments, whole host of things that really, in a lot of ways, stand in the way of us really having a better understanding of addiction without having that judgment there. So one of the things is, and we'll be talking about addiction, that it's not just chemical, but there's also process addiction. And I'll go into detail on what that is. But there is a belief that there is sort of good habits that one does, and then there is that judgment of the bad addictions, and that usually is the drug, the alcohol, the gambling. However, there are individuals that participate in what we call process addiction, and that could be exercising, that could be working an extremely amount of hours, it could be participating in a healthy diet that they indicate that they need to be able to do. And yet these things can be equally as harmful as substance abuse. So we're going to debunk some of these myths as I go forward with my presentation. And really, the truth of the matter, whether it's you're participating in a substance or in a behavior, engaging in a behavior, it simply put, when it comes to the point where it becomes an addiction, which is a definition at the top bulletin, bullet there, is it's never a good thing. Next slide, please. So what are the types of addiction? I touched a little bit on that. And first of all, substance addiction is that which we ingest, and we develop a tolerance for substance. And in order to continue to have the desired effect, we continue to take more and more. And this can result in a physical or psychological dependence. Process addiction, which is engaging in a behavior, we don't recognize this as easily, and I will certainly, you might be surprised at some of them that fall into this category, but this is when a person does not appear to have control as to when, how long, or how much he or she can continue to participate in a behavior. It involves repetitive, high frequency, and excessive use of a behavior. In either case, whether you're participating in a substance or you're participating in a process addiction, the chemical that impacts your brain are similar. And what it does, it triggers the reward system, and I'll go into more detail. The dopamine is impacted in either one, in either case, whether it's, again, substance or behavior. Next slide, please. So a quick one-on-one around substance addiction. So we've got alcohol, tobacco, opioids, opioids, and which also falls into fentanyl, prescription drugs, and again, sometimes prescription drugs are prescribed to alleviate pain. And so it may not start as anything that you're going to be abusing. It's something that is done for a good purpose. Inhalants, cannabis, cocaine, meth, hallucinogens, and PCP or angel dust. Next slide. Okay. Actually, next slide, please. Okay. Okay. Examples of process addiction, and this is when you are engaging in a behavior, and you'll see some of these might be surprising to you to see that these can lead to an addiction. But we have eating disorders, a variety of disorders, which is anorexia, bulimic, binge eating, night eating syndrome, sex, pornography, plastic surgery, seeking out pain, and that could be someone who may cut themselves or burn themselves. That can become a habit. Love, which is surprising, but there are certainly some risky behaviors and relationships that can become addictive and has the same impact on the brain that substance addiction has. Shopping, work, spiritual obsession, exercise, gambling, internet, video games. Again, not to imply at all that the use of any of these behaviors indicates that you have an addiction. And also in substance, you have individuals who could have a glass of wine or smoke some pot and aren't necessarily addicted. However, these are some of the behaviors and substance that can lead to addictions. But again, it's not necessarily indicating that if you are doing any one of, which is most of us are doing at least one or a few of these. Again, it's recognizing the need to continue to engage or ingest in the substance or in the behavior, the frequency of use, and the more that you are needing to achieve the same results. And that's what you want to be aware of. So it may be time to become aware of it if you start seeing that there's a frequency. Next slide, please. So what do substance addiction and process addictions have in common? And here I want to just take a moment because any of us are susceptible to be in these situations where there's an addiction based on our life, based on situations. As you will see, it could also be generic. It can also be environmental. But let me just kind of paint a picture of most of our lives, which is we have a childhood, maybe a good childhood, maybe a challenging childhood, but you've kind of learned how to cope through whatever has been thrown your way. You are now an adolescent, you are a teenager, you go to school, you're participating in life, and you've somehow developed ways of coping with whatever challenges have come your way. So you're doing fairly well, but now as you're getting older, as an adult, you now have more responsibility and more falls on your lap. Maybe now you're a parent. Now you have responsibilities not just for yourself, but for someone else. So just using an example of maybe a young man who was in school, did well, decided wanted to go into the military, went into the military. It's extremely demanding, but he did very well, was able to go up in rankings, did extremely well, decided, at the end of his term, came out and started to re-enter back into civilian life, to adjust to civilian life and to a new way of living. Things were different. The readjustment to come back into your old life is very different, and a lot has changed. Now maybe they're going to school. Things are very different in the school environment. He's maybe around younger students. They've got different value systems. They're doing things a little bit different. He's not sure he's found his way yet, but he's sort of exploring the things that they're doing. Maybe in conjunction has a family and has financial responsibilities. And now there's more on his plate. And he's had coping skills that he's used in the past, but now they're starting to be more and more things that are being added to his life. Most of us have these tools in our to our access, whether it's a support system, whether it's you participate in hobbies, whether it's you exercise, but you've got a way of coping with life no matter how challenging it is. However, then something comes up, a death in the family, maybe a relationship breakup. And that then takes everything that you've been doing now to that next level. And you now are feeling incredibly overwhelmed. Again, not to say that anybody all people in this situation would go in this way. I just want to kind of paint the picture of kind of the mindset that we get to when we're in completely overwhelmed. So as we look at the mindset that comes when you're feeling incredibly overwhelmed, is now there is kind of a lens that you look through that says, boy, I need something more exciting in my life. This is just I don't seem to have a purpose in my life. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Everything that I've been doing up to this point, I'm not really feeling like I've got a purpose. I'm feeling a bit lost. So that individual is really looking for some pleasure or something that kind of gives them that motivation. The other mindset may be I'm overwhelmed, I'm exhausted, I need a break, I need to escape, I really need some relief, I just need to unplug. And so most of us might have both. We may have that need for a change in your life and needing a purpose, but you also may have that feeling of, I just want to unplug and to have a break. What ends up happening is that we tend to be drawn to maybe something that we haven't used before for some relief or um, some pleasure. And so that could be a way that then we may end up seeking for the relief in something that may be a substance or maybe a behavior. So maybe you have a drink after work and that with your buddies, and that seems to kind of take the edge off. And suddenly you're feeling like, okay, this is good 1 day a week. Suddenly it's 2 days a week. Now it's on a daily basis. You're sort of needing that drink. And the tolerance, which is what ends up happening, is that the more you use, the more you need to be able to reach that desirable effect that you initially had. So you might start having the awareness, something's off. I'm drinking, I'm going to drink more often than I have. Some cases you may not even realize it because it's become normalized in the group that you hang out with. A lot of times, if someone is living with somebody else, a spouse, sometimes the spouse or the other person realizes that there is creeping in a problem. Often the individual may not realize it because they may justify, hey, I'm still doing well. I'm going to work every day. I'm paying my bills. My buddies are all doing the same thing. No one is having a problem. Everyone seems to be okay. So that justification minimizes it, and you're potentially becoming deeper and deeper into needing this substance or this behavior. So, and again, I'm saying you, but it could be anyone in your life, not necessarily you specifically. So you start really looking at yourself or looking at your loved ones. Are there any impairments starting to emerge? Is this an individual that can't get started the day, can't get started without having that substance? Is it the person that needs a wake-up drink before they can get going? So there starts to emerge some red flags. And so what ends up happening is that individuals who have start to develop this addiction or this dependency, their life starts to everything they do starts to really be the focus, and they spend a large amount of time either planning for this activity to go have their drink. It really becomes sort of the center of their life. And then again, you're looking at, is is this now starting to create the bigger challenges, the job loss, the relationship issues? Is it starting to impact your memory? Are you forgetting things? Are you not following through on things that you said you were going to be doing? Your judgments, and then you're focusing all in this area. Other areas of your life may start to be neglected. And so what ends up happening, it's also you start having some self-doubt or insecurities, and your value and your beliefs about yourself start to be impacted. You may have some self-disparaging statements about yourself, and you start to isolate and starting to kind of isolate yourself from others. And again, this could be you or this could be somebody else. Next slide, please. So how do addictions develop? And first and foremost, it is really, really, really important that you hear this. And I think most people know this, but sometimes some don't. And that's why there's so much stigma around substance. But um, the addiction is a brain disease. And it's a brain disease in where your brain is hijacked, and no willpower, no self-control, or it's not a character flaw, or that the individual is weak. And so it's really important that people understand it's a brain disease that is impacted by and again, a lot of myths around this area, because there is a lot of judging the individual of somehow having a character flaw. It used to be really heavy back in back 20 years, and certainly the judgment was really, really harsh, but it's still there's still a stigma. So when the urge to take substance or engage in a behavior hijacks parts of the brain, which that rewards the behavior and provides benefits for your body, that area of the brain that's responsible for emotions and decision making believes now that the only thing that is going to be bringing you ultimate relief is that substance. And it ends, and there is a chemical scientific information that says why in the brain, the dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter, which activates the reward system, in general, we need that in order to function. And on an average brain, you have maybe sex, maybe doing something that's enjoyable. And normally the dopamine is released and then you're rewarded, and that, you know, ends up doing the job per se. But when you introduce substance to your brain and it develops a tolerance, now the dopamine that it used to take to reach the reward system has to be doubled. And in order to be doubled, that means that you have to, or it doesn't have to be doubled, in order to get it to the same level, I should say, the substance that you use has to be increased. And so what you're developing now is you're developing that tolerance, which means you need more and more in order to reach that same level. So once the chemicals enters the brain, it causes the brain to lose control of its impulses. And when the brain loses the ability to fight its impulses, there is the reward signal begins to be sent to different areas of the brain. And now what ends up happening is that it creates again that need for more, and you are not able to get that same reward that you were able to get before. Basically, what is happening at this point is that you're creating a level of psychological and physiological dependence. And again, no will, no determination is going to help you to overcome this. You may need some professional help to get to that other side. Next slide, please. So what is the connection between addiction and mental health? And research has identified that most of us who have an addiction or have had an addiction in the past also have a co-occurring mental health disorder. That might be alarming. So what it's really saying is that you will have an addiction to maybe substance or to a behavior, but you're also having a mental health disorder. And so it has been found that when you have a co-occurring disorder, which means you have two different things coming at you, that it's much, much harder than if you just had a mental health disorder or you just had a substance use challenge. So mental health disorders, all of us have some mental health stuff that are going on for us, and some of it is extremely normal, and we deal with it in every day. An example is if you had a loss in your family, someone died, and you experienced the grief that came out of that loss. Well, that sadness and that grief will ultimately, if you've got everything, if you've got the skill set and the coping skills to deal with that support system and a variety of different things that are ways of you coping with that, you may be able to move forward in your life after a couple of months, and because you've able to get more stabilized and to deal with this incredibly huge loss. However, in some cases, that mental health can get extended to now what was sadness or grieving now has become more of a major depression, or life stressors that you're dealing with maybe have become more of anxiety that have been paralyzing and are impacting you in a lot of ways. So that co-occurring packed up with substance, and in some cases the mental health, sometimes it's difficult to tell what came first, the chicken or the egg. Was it the mental health illness or was it the substance abuse? Sometimes the mental health illness can cause someone to self-medicate and use substance, but sometimes you can have somebody who has substance issues and it's been very extensive for a long period of time that they may develop mental health disorder. So But in any case, when you have both, it is a lot more difficult to treat and requires certainly a professional who will work with both. It used to be in the past that we would separate someone out who had a substance issue and addiction, and there was belief that they needed to have that handled before they can come back and deal with mental health, or vice versa. Now the professionals have realized that the best way to deal with it is to deal with both the co-occurring disorders at the same time. So now let me focus on mental health. Let's go to the next slide. So again, what does co-occurring mean? And it really is a term that we use in psychology, but it's also a comorbidity or a dual diagnose. And that simply means that a person has more than one issue that they're dealing with. And these conditions can be combined with mental or physical as well. We're not going to be talking much about physical issues, but that also can be a co-occurring, can also be someone who has a physical situation, which would be maybe cancer or diabetes, but here we're not going to be dealing with that very much. So the co-occurring mental disorders that are associated with addiction, or that there's a variety of them, but these are some of the ones that have been known to occur with also addiction. So we have anxiety, major depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, adjustment disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit disorder. And obviously, not everyone will be having this, but to give you an example, how one life situation can kind of trigger a disorder. Most of us have, as I mentioned earlier, when someone has died, you're dealing with maybe at that time what we may term it in psychology an adjustment disorder, because you're adjusting to a huge loss. So as you're dealing with that loss, you may again be dealing with some emotions, but it's recognizing that when that adjustment period is now 9 months, and now you are mimicking some of the symptoms that you would see in a major depression, or you would see maybe in anxiety, then this is the likelihood that this might be something that was generically in your predisposition, that was in your makeup, but also it might be something that just triggered a deeper emotion. This is also a time where maybe you might be looking for something else to numb some of the feelings that you're dealing with. And so you may turn to something like a substance to be able to deal with a mental health situation that you're dealing with. Next slide, please. So some of how can I develop a mental health disorder then? So again, looking at the factors that come into play when you're dealing with mental health disorders. And there are three factors. We're not going to be dealing very much with the medical, but we are going to be looking at the internal ones, which is individual factors. And those are usually influenced by our genetics, our family, our parents, our family makeup. That could also be uncles and aunts. But what are some of the genetics there that may be influencing us and can be impacting our ability to maybe have developed some kind of a brain chemistry situation that impacts us, and we have a mental health illness. The other one, which is probably larger, and certainly we see this impacting more individuals, and that is the external factors, environmental factors that are susceptible to having a co-occurring disorders. And these are excessive stress, traumas, that could be physical, sexual abuse, living in a war zone, literally, or unsafe environment. As a child, you might have been in an environment where it was a lot of trauma, a lot of screaming, domestic violence. Maybe there was arguing all the time. Maybe there was guns in the home, or maybe you were never hit, you were never hurt, but you heard all this, and that just really ends up taking a toll on our bodies as human beings, and it may be at a very early age in your life, but it still has an impact on us. It could have been neglect, poverty, or negative experiences that our brains have difficult to process. And so some of these things can be in your life and your experience, but you've been managing pretty well. And a lot of times people will minimize it and say, yeah, no, I had that situation. I had that trauma when I was in the military, but no, I'm fine. And so and by minimizing, sometimes it hasn't impacted someone yet. It hasn't really surfaced in a way that it's impacting them on their daily life. But understanding that these things are in your life and could have had an impact is important to be mindful and to be aware. If you haven't had a chance to, one, have the insight to know that these are things that have been impacting you, or if you been maybe in therapy and you've been able to process some of these things, then it wouldn't be any surprise when something surfaces down the road that you're dealing with. But if you've not been exposed to this, then you may then find yourself in a situation of trying to numb and to deal with some of these things. And that's where potentially an addiction can start. And so understanding how some of these things can show up in your life now. It can show up in anger. It can show up in resentment. It can show up in being hypervigilant. It can show up in violence. It can show up in excessive worry, depression, a high level of anxiety. And you're really not sure where this is all coming from, but it can be coming from something in your life that you weren't even aware that was impacting you. And so what happens is, again, human nature, we want relief. We want to start looking at how do we get rid of some of these uncomfortable feelings. And so you may find that this may be a place where individuals start having an addiction begin. Again, not everyone falls into this category. I'm just kind of giving you some scenarios of possibilities because everyone is different. So then you try to get some relief, and maybe again, everything you've used in your toolbox in the past no longer works. And so what you're doing is now you're, moving into a different area and trying to see, where do I get some relief? Again, it may be that drink. It may be a drug that you're taking. It may be something that was given to you as pain medication. And now you find that that can take the numbing out, that can take the edge off of things, that can make you sleep, that can make you feel less angry. And so you start to use things to start giving you that relief. And again, it's not anyone's fault. It's that you don't know what you don't know, but you're using things that are helping you to relieve whatever is going on. And so you may get into a situation where you may start to participate in a behavior or ingest something that now becomes an addiction, but it was really done from the perspective of how to get some relief. Next slide, please. So how do you begin to treat my addiction and my mental health disorders? And again, due to the increased research and understanding the need to work with addiction and co-occurring disorders, we've done a much better job of helping individuals to improve their overall health. And but it is important to start recognizing the signs and the symptoms, and again, for yourself or for someone else, that may be one or several, or that you have had in the past, or that you see that you're leaning towards an area where you're finding that it's reducing some of this uncomfortableness and reducing the pain, and so taking away the stress, numbing you out. So really starting to be mindful and understanding. And maybe a behavior is becoming more risky. Maybe you were doing something that you thought, oh, not a big deal, but now you're participating in something that is having a higher level of risk. Maybe you are drinking and driving, and you're putting yourself and others at risk. And so it's increasing. You see steadily an increase in these behaviors. And again, understanding for both you and for a loved one, there is a purpose. There is a reason why people start abusing substance or abusing behavior. They were looking for something. What was the benefit that they wanted? Was it to just feel better? Was it for the pain to stop? Was it for the ruminating thoughts to stop? Was it to get some sleep? And so understanding what is it that you want, or what is it that your loved one wants when they're doing this, because there is a reason. Addictions serve a purpose. And so to understand that, and sometimes it's just feeling the need to be connected. Sometimes we get to the point where we're so isolated, and that insight of getting a better understanding can be really helpful. And so when you're looking at your loved ones, um, try to find out what is it that the addiction, what is it the substance does for them. It makes them stop thinking, it makes them stop worrying. And so that's really important to know. Next slide, please. So here is, how does, since we're speaking to veterans, here is looking at how the military culture can impact my susceptibility to substance abuse. And I mean, again, in this case, I'm using alcohol because it is in the military culture. It's extremely acceptable, and it is actually in our entire society. It's completely acceptable. But it can be a situation that can be an opening, sort of a gateway to using something in your environment that you really hadn't even thought it was going to bring you relief. You go out and have a drink with your buddies. It's a way to unwind. Sometimes it's a way to connect. Sometimes it is maybe the way that you cope with a stressful or traumatic event. Maybe it's how you self-medicate from having maybe some mental health disorders. You're starting to having a lot of anxiety or a lot of depression, or maybe you have PTSD. And so you find that having a drink, you start to self-medicate, and it starts to allow you to kind of reduce some of those feelings. Illicit drugs have become more common, and in some cases, especially in the military, they may find that it not only did it reduce the pain that it may initially, some of the drugs that was prescribed to you did, but now it decreases fatigue. Maybe it has impacts your board, and it allows you to do that. And maybe when you are in deployment, it has helped you in ways to deal with it. So the misuse of prescribed medication has increased. And as it's increased, there are being used for a variety of different ways that the individual needs to cope. And really, when you think about it, most of us, when you've had kind of the hardest season in your life, again, whether it was a death in the family, most of us will use something. And it's like, let's think about it. Was it that you used maybe alcohol, maybe you used painkillers, maybe you used Valium, maybe you used something to go through that difficult season in your life, and so to have some relief. But in some cases, we may use something, go on a vacation, get away from everything, and we get back into our lives. It's when we are trying to use something to help us through a really tough time, and we are kind of get stuck and don't go beyond that. So I present all of this here to alleviate a lot of the shame and the blame and the guilt. All of us are really just trying to do the best that we can. And when we're faced with challenges, gosh, we weren't born with a book that said when A happens, you do B and C. We're trying to do the best we can. And so sometimes our environment introduces us to something that gives us that relief, and next thing you know, that's what we're using. So I really want to bring normalcy to the situation of addiction, and how most of us can possibly fall into some of this situation, and that it's no one's fault. Next slide, please. So what is wrong with me? Again, kind of carrying the same theme from the last slide. It's you are human. You have a beating heart, you're not perfect, you're doing the best that you can, you experience worry and fear that are normal. You want to seek relief from that fear and that worry, and it may take you to dealing with ways of coping with that overwhelming daily um, situation that you're dealing with. You want to seek that relief, and having a sense of wanting to escape from the distress is very normal. And even though it may be brief, it sometimes is all that you need. But in some cases, you may end up in a situation that you are getting into a more serious situation, and it is important that you and your loved ones help you to start seeing these things before it becomes a much more serious situation. Next slide, please. So relapse is another area that, boy, there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of judgments around and misconceptions. And so first and foremost, the road to recovery is long and difficult. It's not an easy one. And it is not a road that is done linear. It's not done one step one way and then you reach that level and wow, you have sobriety under your belt for 10 years and it's all over. That's not how it works. And part of that relapse, that it's really important to normalize that part of the recovery process is really you're going to have some lapses, and some of those lapses are important to get back. The people who succeed are the ones that get back on the horse again, dust themselves off, and move forward in order to avoid a full-blown relapse. So it takes a lot to go through the recovery process, but it's extremely important to understand that recovery is a process, and it's a process that everyone does differently. No one does it the same way. And so when you're going through dealing with any substance, whether it's substance or process, a behavior, it is good to know that every substance is treated. And it is treated, however, differently. No two are treated the same way. You may have someone who has substance abuse issues in alcohol, and in a lot of cases in alcohol, you need to have detox, and you need to abstain from using alcohol. However, if you're dealing with somebody with eating disorders that has to deal with food, you can't just say you have to abstain from that food. You can't ever eat that food again. So it requires different ways of being treated. And so it is important to understand that the emotional and relational difficulties that you experience and how you deal with the relapse are going to be very different. And also understanding when is it time to seek external support. When is it that absolute willpower is not what's going to be able to get you to the other side? And to know that you're not alone, that there are resources and there are ways to support you, and that people aren't going to be judging you. They're there to support you. Next slide, please. So what can help to manage the difficulty of having an addiction or co-occurring mental disorder? First and foremost, try to be present in your life if you possibly can. Support yourself physically, emotionally, and spiritually every day. Try to spend time doing things that you enjoy. Be insightful of what's going on for you if you can, and listen to maybe your family members who have some concerns, although it's easier said than done. A sense of gratitude. I know it sounds really Pollyannish, but really being able to focus on some of the things that you do have and keeping tabs on your feelings, knowing when you're avoiding, knowing when you want to isolate, notice when you want to just kind of check out. Those are times that are sort of important for you to start managing those difficulties. Next slide, please. Okay, I think we're coming to the end. I'm sorry, this is a little lengthy. Other ideas for supporting your co-occurring disorders. Know your triggers, and that is, when do you know that you are wanting to shut down? When do you know you want to isolate? When are you seeing that your level of anxiety no longer, your tools that you've used are helping you to get to the other side? Know basically some of the triggers that take you to a place that can be a little scary. Contact your emergency support system, or create a support system, someone you can talk to when you're feeling that you really need that extra support, someone that is going to be there and listen to you without judgments. Maybe develop a mantra. Sometimes it's a song, sometimes it's just a scripture, something positive or motivating. Sometimes it's just changing brain um, that thought that's going through your mind, and how to just change that sometimes for 2 minutes to just change it. Know your symptoms if engaging in a trip or a slip. Again, this is if you're going through recovery. Journals can be very helpful. I know some people don't really enjoy doing journals, but it can be extremely helpful. There are many 12-step programs, and most of the 12-step programs will address substance or behavior addictions, process addictions. And I have a list at the end that I'll give to you. Support groups, again, there's many support groups. There are a couple that are faith-based, and there are some that are, very different, but there's one for everyone if you want to be participating. Again, treatment is different for every substance. Know the different treatment facilities. And again, if you reach out, there'll be somebody that will help you to do all that work. You don't have to do that on your own, but there is inpatient facilities and there are different facilities that you need. Talk therapy can always be something to assist you, especially if you see that you've got some of the mental health issues emerging, and before you start using substance to numb out those feelings, maybe talking to someone can be helpful to do. There are also family support groups for families of individuals who are dealing with substance. There's groups for teens, there's groups for families, and really their philosophy is that we are not responsible for someone else's disease or recovery. It's very easy for the family to become codependent and start kind of supporting the individual in a way that does more harm than good. And so at the end of this, what I really want to say is that most of us have a difficult seasons in our lives, and it's in those difficult times that it's important to reach out and help someone. There's no weakness in that, it's a strength. I would really like us to see us stop the stigma around addiction. And really, I think addiction is really the opposite of not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. How do you connect to your loved ones? How do you connect to yourself? You start to lose connection with yourself. And more importantly, to understand you're not alone in this journey. There is a lot of support and help. Next slide, and I think that's the end. Okay, sorry, I went over time. Any questions?
It is quite all right. First and foremost, Marie, thank you for such a robust presentation. We greatly appreciate all the information that you shared. I know that Michael has been monitoring the chat and also Q&A. For before we get to those questions, I'd just like to note, because we are speaking on such a sensitive matter as well, if there's any kind of personal follow-up, I will be providing some contact information that you can connect with Marie
Yes.
privately. So do be sure, as you are, it is a public forum, the Q&A and the chat. So just be mindful of that. And I also respect people's wishes and keeping their privacy or anonymity in that. But we would always want to encourage you to ask any questions if you have any. Michael, at this time, are there any questions?
Yeah, and I really
No,
want to add to that, that if there is anyone that wants to reach out, please do. I mean, there's no obligation. You can be anonymous if you want to, but this is a very delicate area. And so if you have for yourself or for anyone else, do not hesitate to contact me.
Fantastic.
yeah, definitely. And I haven't seen any questions come through. I know that there was some concern and confusion about the link, and whether or not it was working or not. We did check it out on our site, and it looks like the link is working. So I'll say this, Maria, if you were there at the VRC, and if you have any students there that are watching and would like or do have questions, you could raise your hand, and then we could figure out how to unmute you. But if not, then yeah, the questions.
Yeah, and I will say that the students at Citrus College, the contact person there, the mental health worker that we have there, his name is Greg. So certainly reach out to Greg. He's there, I believe, on Thursdays or Tuesdays or Thursday. I can't remember what day, but reach out to him. But again, always feel free to contact me. Don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, yeah, I'm not seeing any other. Actually, yeah, no further questions on Citrus College's side. So Sheree, I'm not sure if you want to move on with the CalTAP overview or if you want to
Yeah.
wind us down, but I'll throw it back to you.
We're going to go ahead and just push through. Marie, just stick with us. We'll see if any questions come through. We do have another contact slide towards the end of our presentation, but I just will briefly breeze through our CalTAP overview. I'm sure some of you who have joined us in a previous outreach before are familiar with this, but essentially CalTAP, we are the Transition Assistance Program with the California Department of Veteran Affairs. We are designed to inform and connect veterans of all eras to their earned federal and state benefits, as well as provide continued support and assistance through our 5 pathways as your needs change over time. So please note that what your needs are today may be different next week or even 3 months to 5 years from now. But we do have a great core curriculum for you. We have 5 different pathways: core curriculum, education, employment, entrepreneurship, and service providers for you to explore your resources and information here within California. And the whole scope that we have here, this is our this is the kind of essentially our service member veteran journey map, how we really are with you through the process of the beginning of your time of service, from separation, living your post-military life, and retirement and aging. Calvet and CalTAP, we are striving to be there for you, connecting with our current separating veterans to even our now retired veterans. We are trying to holistically assist you throughout the whole process. A great resource for all of you is our Veterans Resource Book. Michael might be dropping that in the chat, and I will also email Citrus College if we have any. We can send you a PDF version and or provide more, ship out another box to you there so you have a hard copy on hand. But just a great resource for you all to have. This right here is our Calvet website. Calvet.ca.gov is the best way to get to this particular webpage. As you can see with the 3 circles indicated there, we have the laptop that indicates our CalTAP landing page to visit any of our recordings or resources, recordings like this particular webinar and any other ones of areas of interest and subject matter for you, you can explore there. We also have Find Your Local CVSO or your County Veterans Service Office so you can file your claims. But you also have your VRC, which is a great resource for you to get connected. And lastly, that final little circle is another opportunity for you to download the Veterans Resource Book. Sorry to speed through this, but I do want to get Anthony on here regionally to provide some support. But please stay connected with us via our socials. We have our Calvet, various QR codes here for you, our Instagram, our YouTube, and our Facebook. Again, provide that non-DoD email address to caltap@calvet.ca.gov to stay connected with us. Get connected and stay connected. We greatly appreciate everyone's time, most especially Marie for presenting with us today. But I'm going to go ahead and quickly turn it over to Anthony Rodriguez, our local interagency network coordinator for LA, to quickly breeze through his resources that he has. And then also, if there's any questions that Michael's tracking in the chat so that we can get to those. But Anthony, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you so much, Marie. Thank you for your presentation. I personally learn a great deal every time I hear you and speak with you. So thank you so much. Next page. I'm here to help you all out. There's 8 of us statewide. I think the biggest thing that you can take away from us as links is that we're really state employees whose full-time job it is to help you with transitioning and with acquiring and understanding the best resources you can get. So we have all 8 of the individuals here. I represent the group in the blue, LA and Ventura County, but the entire state is covered. Wherever you may be, all you have to do is call the 800 number that we'll present later, and they'll connect you either with someone in Sacramento or somebody locally. Next page, please. What we do is we provide information as links. This morning I was at Edwards Air Force Base talking to soon to separate military members. I also talk to a number of other different groups and service organizations, nonprofits, and so on. I find a great pleasure in connecting a lot of groups together that may not know each other, and also sharing information with others, like the great work that's done here by US Vets and other nonprofits across the state. So we're really a network that helps you connect with others, as well as providing our own resources that the state provides itself. Next page. Specifically, I have a lot of connections in employment, but I also have a lot of connections in mental health, as do the other links. We have a lot of connections with the VA and starting benefits, collecting and connecting with various benefits, and a lot of nonprofits as well. So whether it's employment, mental health, um, starting a business, perhaps recreation, almost every area you can think of, we're probably going to know somebody, or we're going to know an expert that can help you in all those various areas. So my final page, I think, is next. Oh, okay, most common requests. This is a really useful page for me as a link. And if you were to kind of maybe take a picture or just note this, these are the most common requests we get. So this kind of differentiates us from the VA, federal VA, and tells specifically how we can help. So lots of good stuff there. Understanding the VA, getting a lot of benefits in various areas, specific information with people, the Calvet Home Loans, our CalTAP program, contacts at all the colleges, information about different kinds of discharges and overall Calvet benefits. So that's that page. Thank you. Next page. And then here's my contact information, my cell phone, as well as my email address. And again, remember that we're here to help you. We're here to connect with you. And we work really hard to know all the various resources locally, so that you can get the best help you need as quickly as possible. Okay, turn it back over.
Thank you, Anthony. Greatly appreciate that. Just want to get a quick survey here. We again greatly appreciate everyone attending. If you have your phone on you and you're ready, go ahead and scan that QR code. It'll take you to a very brief feedback survey. We would totally intend on implementing. We actually review weekly any of our webinar surveys, take into consideration any of the opportunities for growth or improvement. So if you want to just quickly snap that, and or Michael will drop the link in the chat there for you, so that you have that readily available. But without further ado, just want to honor everyone's time. I know that we have about 3 minutes left, but I'm going to go ahead and go to this slide right here, which is our contact slide. If you want to speak or connect with any of the presenters today, you have our email addresses as well as a great contact number to reach out to us. That 800 number, believe it or not, will get you connected to either myself or Michael or any one of our CalTAP colleagues that answers calls for anyone that dials into the 800 number. We're here for you to assist you and support you through any of that. Michael, at this time, do we have any questions for any of the presenters?
No questions have come through. I just do want to say that I have been dropping some resources into the chat. There's a link map, a resource book. I've even posted PDF copies of this whole presentation, as well as Marie's presentation. So feel free to check out those resources, download them, keep them on your phone or your laptop. And do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Cherie or any other one of those individuals on the contact slide, and we can help out any way we can.
Great. Thank you, Michael. With that, then, I'm just going to go ahead and let everybody know of some upcoming virtual workshops. I provided the QR code here for our Constant Contact landing page. If you scan that QR code, it actually takes you to the main page that lists all of our upcoming virtual events and hybrid opportunities for you to join us throughout the month of April. We had a wide array of different topics that we'll be covering in a large scope. Particularly a highlight for Citrus College, we have the Southern California Veteran Community and Peer Support Resources, which essentially will gather together any of our Southern California links, an opportunity to get some time and interface with the community. Please feel free to join that one. But again, scan that Constant Contact code there for a listing of any of our upcoming outreach. And last but not least, thank you again all for your service. These are all our socials and a great way of getting in touch and keeping in touch with CalVet. And we greatly appreciate everyone's time today, most especially our presenters and our partners over at Citrus College. That concludes our webinar today, and thank you all very much for attending.